So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Lennix. I'm the director of OKEx. Today, I would like to introduce one of the really interesting projects, Stack, and also an honorable guest, Marvin, the technical directors of Stack. So OKEx as well as OKCore on this recently list Stack, which is very interesting idea because if you talk about DeFi, yield farming, or anything related to farming. I think, but mostly as originate lies on Ethereum ecosystem. But right now we're talking about Bitcoin, how we can execute. So how we can execute the entire ecosystem of DeFi and Bitcoin ecosystem. So Marvin, could you just start to introduce a little bit yourself and Stack so that we can kickstart the questions?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Marvin. I'm the technical lead at the STX Foundation. So STX is a new ecosystem that brings apps and smart contracts to Bitcoin. So apps built on STX technology will thus inherit all of Bitcoin's powers. So you run your smart contracts on the STX system, and those get finalized on the Bitcoin chain. So what you get is insight into the Bitcoin network, and also, and more importantly, you get the security that comes with Bitcoin.
So people are actually wondering, because BTC or Bitcoin is a pretty basic protocol that designed for peer-to-peer monetary transfer, value transfer. So how Stack can generate passive yield in Bitcoin protocol? What would be the rationale behind? How does this work?
Right. So with Stacks, we pioneered a new kind of consensus algorithm called proof of transfer. This is a very interesting system where people that hold Stacks tokens, they can lock these tokens up for a specific amount of time. We call this stacking. And when you do this, you generate a Bitcoin yield. And that's, of course, it's very attractive form of consensus that everyone can participate in. So the way this works is fully decentralized. And that's, of course, because it runs on top of Bitcoin. So what happens is when you stack your tokens, it is kind of like a vote of confidence for a particular chain tip. And then the miners in return will see that, and they have to spend Bitcoin in order to be elected as the leader to mint new Stacks tokens. So the Bitcoin that they transfer ends up in the wallets of the people that are stacking their Stacks tokens.
So the contributor of the yield is still the miners. The miners need to pay in Bitcoin in order to mint Stack, right? So correct. What is the use case? Why those miners would like to mint Stack? What's the purpose?
Well, I'll backtrack a little bit with that. Yep. So we all know proof of burn, where you send a token to a burn address as validation. So it's kind of an evolution on that. We thought like, well, if we build on top of Bitcoin, if miners have to burn Bitcoins in order to secure the network, that is a wasteful act, right? We're destroying something of value. So that is one of the reasons why proof of transfer came to be. So the reason why they then do this is because the Bitcoin that they spend, so paying the stackers that vote for the chain tip, they get to mint the new Stacks tokens and burn and construct the next block. So that's where they would derive their value. So in fact, that would mean that that's only attractive if the amount of stacks that they create is more valuable than the Bitcoin they spend to create it. Right?
Interesting. So what's the origination of this idea before you guys come up this Stack idea?
The origination of proof of transfer?
Yeah.
I would say like one of the main reasons is, of course, like we don't want to destroy Bitcoin in the process of securing the network. So I guess the underlying thought here is that if you want to bootstrap a new blockchain, that's a very intense, involved process, right? So if we look at Bitcoin with proof of work, by far the most secure chain in terms of work. And it's just not easy to start something like that. You need miners, you need that decentralization, and of course there's a question of the energy usage of the Bitcoin network. So the thought here is like, well, Bitcoin is already there, Bitcoin is already really secure, Bitcoin can be the backbone of the new internet. So why not leverage the proof of work that's already being done by the Bitcoin chain and use that to secure the network? So that's one of the underlying thoughts there. And if you want to know more about proof of transfer, particularly, I would invite everyone to check out the white paper pioneered by the people at Hero Systems and the Stacks Foundation.
Interesting. So for Stack, they actually, because of that design, right, that actually requires some kind of duration, a lot of minimum duration, what looks like a lot of period. So do you think it's just necessary, it's mandatory, or you think in foreseeable future there will be a flexible kind of like duration that user can choose?
Right. So if you participate in stacking, you have to lock up your tokens for a certain amount of times. So we call that a cycle. A cycle is about 2 weeks, and you can lock up for a maximum of 12 cycles. So that's a long time. The reason for locking up is to signal that support for a particular chain tip. So you help the network by doing so, and then in return you get the Bitcoin. So there's a period right now which you have to choose in advance for how many cycles you want to lock up your Stacks tokens. And this is important right now because after you lock up period, you have to wait for 1 cycle before you can stack again. So we call that the cooldown period. So if you stack for 1 cycle, you got to wait for 1 cycle, and then you can stack for another cycle. If you lock up for 12 cycles, you can gain reward for 12 cycles, and then there is a cooldown period of 1 cycle. I do have to say though, the planned upgrade of Stacks 2.1 will remove that cooldown period so that you can stack continuously.
What is the worries about the cooldown period? You think that people will be being very opportunistic, just in and out all the time?
I think the cooldown period is something that has also generated a bit of confusion because people, they want to lock up their tokens and they want to keep stacking and keep earning those Bitcoin yields. So that's one of the reasons why this is being reinvented and getting rid of the cooldown period.
So would that be assuming if there's a lot of miners that's competing to pay in Bitcoin to mint Stack, would that mean that the yield of Stack would be relatively higher, or so that's actually a supply demand question, right? Or you think that the yield is actually relatively stable right now?
So the yield can differ a bit. I think the last time I checked, it was around 11% APY, but don't quote me on that. So this changes based on the effects of the network. So there's some calculation involved. I would invite everyone to check stacking.club. It's a fantastic resource that gives you more information. But the basic idea is it depends on the liquid supply and how many people are stacking and things like that. And that generates a minimum threshold of Stacks tokens that you need to be able to stack. So this hovers around 80 to 90,000 stacks as of late. But that doesn't mean that you need that much just to be able to stack. We have stacking pools as well. So you can actually delegate your Stacks tokens to a pool, which will then stack. And you can receive those rewards that way. And there's different pools that offer different incentives for that.
Cool. Interesting. So do you think that if Bitcoin were to get able to add smart contract on that, because would that be possible to generate more yield on stacking?
Yeah, sure. There's many different ways to do that. So the Stacks chain, the Stacks smart contracts, they have some insight in the base chain being Bitcoin. And there are a lot of emerging new DeFi protocols being developed on Stacks right now that that can leverage Bitcoin. So you can imagine, for instance, some sort of asset like a stacks future that you can purchase, and those underlying stacks tokens are then being stacked, and those futures you can then trade on a DeFi market for more stacks tokens, which you can then stack as well. So you can create a lot of interesting products that have compounding interest.
Interesting. So what were the updates on the SEC that treating STX might be or might not be a security?
Right. So for the people that don't know, Stacks was the first, and as far as I know, the only token that's been approved by the SEC and gone through the process, the legal aspects required for that. I have to preface, I'm no legal expert. I'm also not in the US, so don't quote me. Look this up as well. But Hero Systems, which was formerly Blockstack PBC, they worked on the initial version of the Stacks chain. They filed their last annual report a while ago, and supposedly this is going to be the last report. So Hero Systems is treating Stacks as no longer being a security. And and I assume that's it's going to continue that way.
Cool. So so Stack is actually one of the first qualified token offering, right, in US, and also is not defined as securities based on US regulations.
Yes, that's correct. And it's a question we've been asked, like, is this being traded in the US then? And yes, there are platforms that American citizens have access to where you can legally purchase these tokens.
Yeah. So thank you. So here's some question from our Twitter followers. So the first question, I know Stack that brings DeFi to Bitcoin. So how does this compare to DeFi on Ethereum? Do you vision that Stacks on Bitcoin would have a DeFi ecosystem?
Of course, it's a really broad question, so I can name a few different things. How does it compare to Ethereum? We've seen a lot of very interesting and great innovation on Ethereum. So particularly like stuff like Uniswap and these automated market makers, very interesting stuff. So Stacks enables all of that on Bitcoin. And the upside for the Stacks system, of course, is that the smart contracts that you write on Stacks have access to the Bitcoin chain state. So you can actually read and you can respond to events that happen on Bitcoin. So that is going to lead to a lot of very interesting DeFi products. There's already some stuff being worked on, like stable coins. So we have Arcadeco, which is like a liquidity pool. There's a few different projects that are in the works right now. So I think you'll see a lot of things that you've already seen in Ethereum, but also a lot of new innovations that are only possible on Stacks. So one thing that I'm particularly excited about as well is novel tokens that use stacking in some way. So we've seen NFTs. Yeah, so we've seen NFTs that can stack. So there's a project called Boomboxes, and these are NFT tokens that have an underlying stacks amount, and those will stack while you own that token. So it's very interesting.
So it's like an NFT project that based on Bitcoin protocol.
Yeah, and you can say it's an NFT that generates a Bitcoin yield while you own it, and you can trade that token as well, right? So that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, quite interesting. So another question would be, why Stack is built on top of Bitcoin? What's the point on Bitcoin?
Yeah, some people are very curious of why that is, or sometimes even surprised. So I already answered this a little bit before, but Bitcoin is simply by far the most secure chain out there. So if you look at Stacks from a theoretical level, it could be deployed on top of any chain. So the idea here is, like, why reinvent proof of work that energy is already being put in? So we just leverage that security. So Bitcoin is the largest chain, has the most hash power. That's why it's using Bitcoin. But you could foresee a future where maybe a different chain might be more secure, and Stacks could switch to that. Like it's theoretically possible. So a mantra that you often hear repeated in the Stacks community, and I'll have to admit, I forgot who exactly came up with it, but they say, like, if you see Bitcoin as the gold that's being mined, then Stacks is kind of turning that gold into jewelry. You're not going to restart the whole process. And I really like it. I just wish I remembered who came up with it, but I'm sure we'll find out.
Pretty good analogies, right?
Yeah.
So there's so final question from treasurers. So NFT is getting more popular today. So you look NFT as a bright future. So what you guys have any plan to include NFT into your projects? So I think you already answered a little bit. Do you have any exact plan that, or what your view in general for NFT space?
Yeah, of course, NFTs very hot topic right now. There's lots of development being done in the NFT space on Stacks already. So I mentioned boom boxes. So those are NFTs that generate a Bitcoin yield. But recently, we have a platform called Residio that was launched by community members that created really a groundbreaking new kind of NFT platform. And they already have partnerships with lots of legendary artists, Chemical X, and they've created like these collaborations with artists like Cara Delevingne, Fatboy Slim, and a bunch of others. So that's already really exciting. I think that token sale started today or yesterday. So that's really interesting. And then we have a few other NFT projects that are also in the works, so a few marketplaces and trying to find new innovative ways in which you can leverage NFTs.
Yeah, so maybe several final questions. So from the communities, what would be your plan in this year? Right, what's your key focus for upcoming for Stack developments?
Well, of course, that again a broad question, so I'll try to answer it from a personal standpoint. So, as the technical lead, I'm working on making the technology as accessible as possible. So we are really concerned about education and getting people to understand like what it is like to be a developer and what is required, and of course how to do it. We're working on integrations with existing platforms and partners. So we just want to spread this technology far and wide, and then also really support new innovation. So when it comes to the Stacks Foundation, we recently launched the Stacks Accelerator. So we're looking for all-star teams that want to build on Bitcoin and create new kinds of platforms. So everyone who's interested in that, you should check out stacks.ac. Very, very interesting stuff. And then we also have the grant program. So we're all about putting data ownership back into people's hands. So the user-owned internet. And for that, we give out grants to different applicants. So you could be an individual or a team working on something. And if this promotes that vision of the user-owned internet, you can apply for a grant at the Stacks Foundation, and we can fund some work that you do. So those are some of the big focuses right now.
What kind of projects that you think is most excited that you guys will mostly funded? That also in line with just that question.
This is again like we have funded a very broad range of different projects. So the one I mentioned before, Arcadeco, is actually one of the grantees. So they received funding to build their platform, and are now moving on to the next step, possibly raising more funds and whatnot. Residio, the NFT platform, has also applied for part of their development. We've seen stacking pools, we've seen educational videos, we've seen content creation. We have different chapters around the world, in China and in Korea, that we fund to help them build on this technology and move the space forward. And I think we lost Lennix.
Yeah, so I think that this might be pretty much for today. So do you have anything to add, Marvin?
No, I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, let's keep it at that.
Cool. Yeah, so guys, I would like to introduce that for stack price reward. Please go to OKEx official English Telegram for your reward. And if you have ever claimed that if your question has been selected, you please ping our community members as well for your wrap packets reward. So, but anyway, thank you so much for today, Marvin. And Stack is really unique, exciting project, and also most notably is one of the very unique qualified token offerings actually that you can travel in US soil according to regulators. So and potentially a stack can be applied to all kinds of protocol, not just Bitcoin. So very exciting for the development. So thank you so much for your time, Marvin.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you. Bye for now.
See ya.